Why are there different accents in the regions of Vietnam?
Why do Vietnamese have two wedding ceremonies?
Why do Vietnamese have French words?
Why is Vietnamese in Latin script?
Why do Vietnamese ride motorbikes?
You're listening to Why Do Vietnamese, a cultural podcast by VSAR.
Welcome to Why Do Vietnamese, Vietnamese Cultural Talks with VSAR. Each episode we pick a new topic of why do Vietnamese do this or that, and share our personal insight on the topic. We hope that through these podcasts, we can help answer questions you didn't even know you had about Vietnamese culture. My name is Brian, the president of VSAR, and your host for today. Joining me today is someone very special from the Chinese Student Association at Ryerson University. Audrey is joining me here today. Hello, Audrey. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Audrey and I am the Vice President for the Ryerson University's Chinese Student Association. Thank you so much for having me, Brian.
Well, thank you so much for joining, Audrey. I know you have lots of great stories to share from your perspective and so much more about Chinese culture that we also want to share on the insight, and I think it's such valuable to have you here for our second special Lunar New Year episode. So I'm so grateful that you're here and excited to see what we're gonna go into. So as we are aware, it is Lunar New Year now, and by the time this is posted, it will be the new year. So let's take a moment to share our New Year's wishes in our respective languages. So I'll do Vietnamese first, and then you can do Chinese. So I'll start first. So for Vietnamese, we always start off with your Happy New Year. So chúc mừng năm mới, vạn sự như ý, an khang thịnh vượng, sức khỏe dồi dào. So that meant Happy New Year. Thousands of your things that you're doing are all going to go as you planned. Wishing you lots of good luck and fortune, as well as lots of good health. So, Audrey?
Okay, so I'm gonna do mine in Cantonese, just because I speak Canto at home with my family. So, 祝大家身體健康，學業進步，出入平安. So the first one meant basically really good health throughout the year. Everyone stays healthy, which is really important in these times. 學業進步 means like improving in your studies, because like we're university students, we need to get better. We need high GPAs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 出入平安 just basically means no matter if you're going in or going out from your home, like everything is good. You know, nothing bad's gonna happen to you. Everything is just like in a good state.
Mm-hmm. Very good and very meaningful wishes.
Thank you.
So thank you, Audrey, for sharing your wishes. I do believe that it's so nice to hear different languages, and as well as being able to share our deeper insights into these wishes, as they are a very meaningful aspect of Lunar New Year, is sharing each other with these wishes and greetings to start off the new year on a good start. And now, before we get into today's topic for our podcast, we do have our V Music feature, which will share a bit of a song relating to each episode's topic. And already, I guess you guys can guess it's probably going to be about Lunar New Year, but we'll get right into it. Alright, so that song was Tết là đây chứ đâu by Orange and Sea Chains. So that song, what it meant was the Lunar New Year is here, where else can it be? And it talks about how in the modern times, everybody's so busy with your phone, social media, TikTok and everything that you forget to come together as a family and really celebrate. So it's kind of like a reminder as that is here, it's where the family is. So let's celebrate in that way. So yeah. Really good song, in my opinion. Very festive. And there's a TikTok trend too, if anybody wants to try that out. All right, so we'll get right into our topic for today. Our topic on why do Vietnamese is why do Vietnamese eat vegetarian food during Lunar New Year, or also just avoid meat in general during the first day, or some people like the first week of the new year. So Audrey, have you heard of anything similar to this before, or like what do you think about this?
Yeah, like I've heard of it. My family also does something similar to that.
Really? Wow. Nice to hear that there's already similarities we're drawing right there. So just a bit of insight to why specifically Vietnamese have this tradition is, so it originally began around like 1,000 years ago in 1000 AC during the Lý Dynasty. So during this time, Buddhism became really widely influenced throughout the areas of Vietnam that was Đại Việt at that time, and it's currently the northern regions of modern-day Vietnam. And during this time, Buddhism was really widely spread amongst the royal family, the locals, the citizens of the nation as well. And the tradition of this vegetarian diet branched off from Buddhist teachings where they don't want to eat meat as a part of building good merit and focusing on karma, where when they eat meat, they're causing an animal to suffer, which is why they choose vegetarian options to start off the year in a good, positive thought. This tradition of vegetarian diets on the first day can be found throughout the regions of Vietnam, North, Central, South, and Buddhism actually has a larger influence on the southern Vietnamese regions. So many devout Buddhists would adapt vegetarian diets for the first few days, sometimes even the first 15 days of the new year. And the reason for adapting these is because Buddhism, like I said earlier, there's the concept of freeing all beings from suffering. And one of that is refraining from slaughtering any animals for food, because you are freeing them from their suffering as being a part of this lifetime. The first day of the lunar calendar is typically a very auspicious day for most East Asian cultures, and Vietnam is no exception to that. On the first day of Lunar New Year, many locals and Vietnamese overseas will visit the Buddhist temples or local temples and pray for good health and a happy new year and just good fortune. And as a result, they typically stay for lunch or like a meal at the temple, and it's bound to be vegetarian anyways. And so they're going to be having that as a meal of the day anyways, so they might as well keep it for the whole day to have that good feeling of you're eating healthier food, fresher, and vegetarian diet to have like a clear start to the new year. In addition to religious beliefs, nowadays there's also that new trend of living a healthy lifestyle and not just eating so much meat. So vegetarian diet can act as like sort of like a meat cleanse for some people, where they're just, I'm going to start the year on a healthy note. I'm going to protect the environment in our water systems by not having runoff water from eating too much meat and increasing the demand for meat. So there's also that side as well as a new, more recent reason as why people partake in this tradition. But overall, it's mainly because of religion, and it's just like a fresh start to the new year. And in present times, this has evolved into a huge industry of vegetarian food options in the country, in Vietnam, and it's just in Vietnam communities overseas as well. You can find a huge range of vegetarian options from very elaborate foods. You wouldn't even expect it, and they're mainly made out of gluten, tofu, or like different vegetables that are spices are put in there, the sauces are used, but it's all vegetarian. But it's like imitation duck, chicken, meat, seafood, like anything that you can imagine in terms of food regularly. There's a vegetarian version of it in Vietnam, which is crazy. Like the amount of talent and the amount of skill that they put into creating these dishes, and it's very interesting. So very famous dishes like pho, bún bò Huế, and like bún riêu, there are vegetarian options. Very interesting. And both overseas and in Vietnam, you can find many Vietnamese Buddhists who continue to adapt this temporary vegetarian diet during the Lunar New Year time, sometimes, like I said earlier, ranging for 15 days. But most people would do it for the first day, Lunar New Year day, and that helps them have a cleanse as well as building on that religious aspect to it as well. So Audrey, I heard you earlier saying that your family does this as well. So is the reasoning behind that similar, or is it a bit different, or what is your intake to this?
Well, my family's just very traditional. We've just been always doing that. To what I've been told by my parents, they tend to change it up sometimes, is that, like, it's just kind of like a good start to the new year, like cleansing, kind of just like you want a good, nice start, you know, start things off clean, so a really nice just cleanse to the body, just in general. So, like, it's very similar, actually. So we, sometimes, depending on who we have lunch or dinner with, because we usually will just have like go to vegetarian restaurants. So in Hong Kong, like all the vegetarian restaurants or restaurants will just try to serve many more like vegetarian options to gain more customers. And then the bookings are just so hard to get. Around that time, you have to book like a month in advance just to get a seat. It's insane.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually really interesting how they like change their menu to vegetarian options.
Yeah, they have like those do specifically.
Mm-hmm. It's really meeting the demand, I would say. Good business. Business tactics.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really interesting. I think how there's that similarity right there. I think regionally, Hong Kong, where your family's from, and Vietnam, they're kind of in near proximity as well. So that might have some reasoning behind why there's that similarity as well. But yeah, I think that's really interesting. So now you guys know why do Vietnamese eat vegetarian during Lunar New Year is because of these reasons. And so we've mentioned slightly about this one specific traditional aspect, which is eating vegetarian diets during the Lunar New Year. So I know another really interesting one that personally I find is very interesting of a topic, as well as there's so many similarities and like differences between Asian cultures. But I want to hear about it, and I think it's really worth sharing. So what are some of the superstitions that you grew up with during Lunar New Year?
Well, there's a lot, I'm gonna be honest. My family is very traditional. Like, even though I'm in Toronto right now, they will call me, they'll send me things. Like, these are all from Hong Kong. My parents bought them and shipped them over here last year, and then they're like, just reuse them every year. Like, you know, you have to put things up, and I'm like, got it. So one of them is that we have to clean the house. So a very like common tradition is cleaning the house, like the kind of like New Year's Eve for Chinese for the Lunar New Year, and then we also have to do like a pomelo leaf bath. So you get pomelo leaf, you boil it in water, and so the water becomes green and just like has like the essence of like the pomelo leaf. And then you just wash your entire body with it. Sometimes we'll even clean the house with it. So I had to like get a Swiffer like with a towel drenched in this pomelo leaf water, and then just like completely just mop the entire like house for that, just to satisfy my parents. And then we also took like a 7-flower bath. So you have to find like 7 like flowers of like 7 different colors. And then just also drench yourself in that as well after the pomelo leaf water. So that's just one of those things that I just have to do every year. And because it's not easy to find that kind of thing, my parents found a small company in Hong Kong that does these specialized soaps. And one is for the pomelo leaf bath, and the other is for the flower bath. So I have like just a bar of soap that has all those infused essences, and I just like take a bath in that like every Chinese New Year now.
That's really convenient, I think.
Yeah,
modern
like
times, modern solutions.
Yeah.
But that's very intense. I was not expecting something that intense, but wow, that's crazy. It's amazing actually how you do the entire house. But that's actually very similar to Vietnam as well. The whole thing about the polymo leaf, so that one is also considered lucky and auspicious in Vietnamese culture as well. So people, after they go to anything that's considered unauspicious, like a funeral or whatever, before they enter their house, they would wash their like face and stuff with the pomelo leaf water, and that would be used to clean like the Buddha altar and like different things. Like it's considered like almost like holy water in some way, but with like a more Asian twist to it, and to clean the whole house, I think that must smell really good.
Yes, the entire house just smells amazing, like after like the first 2 days, and then I'm just like, oh, it just smells so nice and fresh, and you're just like it's weird because once the entire apartment is just covered in that smell, you just feel it's like weirdly refreshing. I can't explain it.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I agree. It's like
Yeah.
nostalgic in some way. Like that smell has been connected to that season. Like you would only like you smell it and you're just like, oh, it's New Year, right? Like,
Yeah. It's like if Bath and Body Works came out with that scent, I think a lot of Chinese people would buy that. As a candle, just like the entire house would just smell like Chinese New Year. Like, money is coming.
You know what? You are probably saying a really good business idea. Looks like you gotta start that now. I think another smell that's really nostalgic for me is like fresh fruits, flowers, and like tangerine smell specifically reminds me a lot of Lunar New Year. Like I remember my house would have like you can buy so much of mandarins, oranges, tangerines, citrus fruits in general are a very big part of Lunar New Year, I would say. So that's another smell that is like really connected to Lunar New Year for me.
Yeah.
But like 7 flowers you said earlier, and now it's all in a bar of soap. It's very convenient.
Yeah.
That must be really hard though. I can imagine like it's the winter here in Canada and you have to go find 7 different flowers. Like.
Yeah, which is why they're like, yeah, we're just gonna send you this bar of soap that has everything, so just do that. And I'm like, okay.
We love convenience. It's
yes. Yes.
So in terms of like superstitions for me, I would say not sweeping the house for the first 3 days of Lunar New Year is a very big thing in Vietnam, because it's believed that if you sweep your house during the first 3 days of Lunar New Year, the luck that has arrived during the New Year will be swept out the door. So that's why, similar to you, prior to the New Year, like a few days or a week, intense cleaning of the house is done. Yes. Cleaning every single nook and cranny you can imagine, pulling out everything from the corners, behind couches, under everything, just cleaning everything to get rid of all the old year's dust, all the old year's bad luck, and just start the new year really fresh. I think it's a really good excuse to make your living space all clean again. So because like if you don't clean all year, it's like the one time a year, let's clean up, and there's a reasoning and more motivation to do so.
Yeah, and also you find things you don't want under the bed. You're just like, okay, out the door you go.
Exactly. You can clear up space and get ready to shop for the new year. Buy new clothes for the new year. Throw out your old stuff. Go donate it or go thrift it, and get yourself some new clothes for the new year, which is also another auspicious act in the new year, to have a new set of clothing, at least one, for the new year, to start off the new year fresh. So you don't want to wear anything that's ripped on the first day of Lunar New Year. You don't want to wear anything black. You don't want to wear anything that's like considered old or like really raggedy. That's another suspicion or superstition during the Lunar New Year, is you have to wear new clothes. New start, new beginning. So there's also, I mentioned, no sweeping the house during the New Year. No wearing old clothes. I think another one would be you're not allowed to wash your hair too during the first. Some people go for 3 days, some people go for like a week. I don't know how they do it. They don't wash their hair for the first like few days of the year. It's like, let's keep our luck. We're not gonna wash it. We're not gonna sweep the house. I don't know. Some people still do it. Apparently, it's better for your hair too to not wash your hair every day. Keep the natural oils. But it's an interesting one.
I do that too. Like, I just like don't wash my hair for like the first maybe 1 to 2 days, because after 2 days, because my hair is very thin and oily, it looks like I haven't washed myself in a week.
Try shampoo. Innovations.
Yeah, it's just.
I don't think
funny.
dry shampoo counts, so you should be okay if you use that.
I mean, I don't go out that much now because of the pandemic, so I should be fine.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So another superstition I would say in Vietnam is called Som Nuk. That one is where you look at the zodiac of the person who is like the head of the household, and then you find of that year if the zodiac of that head of the household matches with somebody else's zodiac age, and that person must be the first person to step foot into the house, and that is believed to give them good luck for the year. It's called Som Nuk, and that person when they welcome to the house, if their age or the zodiac matches with whoever is the head of the household, then it's believed to give them good luck. And if you have somebody who's not matching with the age, you're bound to have a year of bad luck. Which is why in Vietnam, you never visit a stranger's house or go to other people's houses during the first morning of the new year. Afternoon, evening, okay, but the morning you do not do that because you don't want to mess up people's samduk tradition. And some people take it very seriously. They will lock their kids out of their house and be like, you will return tomorrow morning, go somewhere, come back the next day because your age fits with the head of the household kind of thing.
Oh my god, I remember doing that a bit for like when I was a kid. But we would, like, our parents weren't crazy enough to like say we're not allowed in the house until like the next day. Our parents are just kind of like, okay, go hang out with grandma for today and just like, we'll see you tonight.
They have it
like,
in Hong Kong too?
Yeah, like some households do that. Like my parents used to do that. They don't really do that anymore. They're just kind of like, it's fine. We do enough things here.
Yeah, you have a lot of traditions to uphold, so
yeah, like
One
for
less thing to worry
this,
about.
like our entire family, like every year we like they go all out. We all have to wear like traditional Chinese like qipao and then like Chinese like traditional Chinese wear. So I have like this like sweater that I just have to wear every year at Chinese New Year. And then my dad just has his jacket that he just wears every year. Like we all wear like the same thing just every year for Chinese New Year because it's like, oh, it's Chinese-y. It's like the one time a year you wear it.
I think it's nice to have that. It really throws you in the mood. And it's like a way to really preserve like traditional clothing in some way. Because like when else are you going to wear it, right?
Yeah, but I know some people wear it on a daily basis. Like some, like certain like people will like, oh no, I just like it. It just looks nice on me, so they'll just wear it. Whatever.
Yeah, that's like goals, to be honest with you. To bring back traditional clothing and like incorporate into daily life. Because the way clothes was designed back then was designed for the weather and practicality. Versus now it's more for looks and it might not be the best adjusting to the weather. So yeah, I do think it's a nice aspect of history.
Yeah.
So that's some crazy superstitions we have shared so far. I'm sure you have plenty of more, but I'm
not gonna go through the whole thing. It's a lot.
We can be here until next year.
Yeah.
So yeah, next thing here we have is, do you know if the differences between the Vietnamese and the Chinese zodiac in origin story? Like, are you aware that there are any differences?
Not that I know of, because I've never really heard the Vietnamese version. I know the Chinese version really well because we were like brainwashed it throughout primary school. Every year you just watch the same video until you graduate and you're like, okay, I don't have to watch this video anymore.
I think growing up I had like this VHS tape that it was in Cantonese. It was like a cartoon of this story. I don't know, maybe we watched the same one, but like
maybe, honestly, maybe.
But in the Vietnamese zodiac, for a lot of people actually don't realize that there's very minor differences, but they are kind of big differences. One of them being the actual animals that are in the zodiac are actually different. So for the Chinese zodiac, you have the ox, and then you have the rabbit or bunny, and then the goat. So those are the three animals I want to point out. So that's on the Chinese side, right? There's, I think it was sheep, rabbit, and ox. Vietnamese side, it's actually a water buffalo instead of an ox. Instead of a rabbit, it is a cat. And instead of a sheep, it's specifically only a goat. So I know I've seen some people saying year of the ram, and then they have like plush sheeps and like rams and things. But in Vietnam, it's only goat. It's specifically only goat. Like there's no mention of a ram or like a sheep. And those are the main differences. So that's why a lot of people are just like, oh, what is your zodiac sign? If they say like rabbit, you know that, oh, they're from Chinese. If you say cat, then they know it's like Vietnamese. In terms of the story though, I do believe it's very similar, where the Jade Emperor held a competition for animals of the Earth realm to have a year named after each animal, and the 12 of them would pick as the first 12 winners once they made it to the Heaven Gate. And they had this giant race between the 12 animals to make their way, and it was in the order of rat, ox or water buffalo, then tiger, bunny, or no, tiger, dragon, rabbit.
No, it's tiger, bunny, it's tiger, bunny, and then dragon. and then snake.
Snake, yeah.
I can do it really quickly in Canto, but if I need to translate it in my head, it takes me a bit.
Let's do it. Share it in Cantonese.
Okay, so it's in Cantonese. It's 鼠牛虎兔龍蛇馬羊猴雞狗豬.
Wow.
Like we were like also brainwashed into that. So so it's like rabbit, ox, tiger, bunny, dragon, snake, horse, goat, and then monkey. Wait.
Monkey, rooster.
Yeah, monkey, rooster, dog, pig.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, the translation took a bit.
This
It's like-
similarly in Vietnam too, like people would say
Yeah.
it, like they have like on the top of their head, they're just like
Yeah.
"Tỷ số dựng mạo thân tỷ ngõ mùi thân dạo túc hợi." Like that's
Yeah.
the order to it, and it's
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah, and then it's just like you have to translate it, and then just like the internal Google Translate is like buffering, and I'm like, ah.
It really is, honestly.
Yeah.
It is. So that's really interesting to see these differences between like the two zodiacs, and I think it's a lot and really deeply rooted in the traditions and superstitions as well, based on zodiac signs. And this year is also the year of the tiger. In Vietnamese, it is Nhâm Dần, or I think it is the water tiger, from what I believe. Yeah, so that's what it is. So now into an aspect that's a bit related to what we mentioned earlier, but more broad and way more complex. What is your favorite Lunar New Year food?
Oh my god, I don't. Honestly, there's so much.
You
Like-
can list them. List a few.
I
Don't-
really like the nian gao, so like the traditional like Chinese the New Year cake, cause like we cut it up into like rectangles, dip it in egg and pan fry it. It is like the best thing ever. Like that is just hands down one of my favorites. I mean, radish cake in Chinese culture is very normal, so even if it's not Chinese New Year, we can kind of get it, so that's also very normal. There's the watercress cake, cake, which is also really good because that one it's like kind of clear and it's yellow, and then there's like tiny like bits of watercress in there. It's like really refreshing. It's just so good.
Is it like the jelly that has like the goji berries in it?
No, that's like a different like Chinese dessert. That's guaifago, which is like I think it's chrysanthemum. I think is what guaifa is in English, and then like in like jelly. But
Okay.
yeah, but that one's also really good. There's just so many different types, because there's also fa choy donggu, which is kind of like, there's this Chinese vegetable kind of looks like hair. It's like really dark and thing or something. I don't know what it's called in English. I'm sorry.
It's like I believe it's like a type of seaweed, isn't it? It's like an algae.
I think
It's
so.
like called angel hair in Vietnamese, I think.
Oh,
It's very
okay.
thin and it's black moss
Yeah,
almost.
yeah,
right?
yeah. So that, and then with just Chinese, just dried mushrooms.
Mhm.
It's like the best thing ever. Like my brother and I, we will fight over it. Like it's all vegetables, but we just fight over it heavily. Because we
I
only
think
have it
that
like
was
once a year.
actually that algae you're referring to, I think it's actually banned in China, I believe.
It used to be not banned in China, so it used to be okay. So like
Yeah.
back then we were like, so now I just really miss it.
I think you can still find it in Toronto pretty easily. Like there was an article
I don't
a
know.
few weeks ago.
I don't know. I don't know how to make it. I need to ask my parents how to make that. Like that is one thing I need to get into.
Well, that's very interesting too, because personally for me, I'm actually Chinese as well, so I do have the Nin Gao too. For me, because I'm Taiwanese culture, we call it Di Ge, meaning sweet cake. Or if it's Cantonese, it'd be Tin Gao. So we do the same thing. We'll also cut it up and fry it after we offer it to the ancestors first, and then we fry it. But I believe in Vietnam, they actually have it in the northern regions as well. It's called Bánh Tàu, meaning ancestral cake in Vietnam. And it's the same thing. It's also the glutinous rice mixed with brown sugar and then steamed into a cake. And stamped with a red seal. So that's also in Vietnam as well. For me, I think my favorite Lunar New Year food would probably not so much because of the taste, but more for the action and the activity of it is hot pot. It's very common to see in Vietnam. The Lunar New Year Eve dinner is hot pot because that is a dish that you would only eat with your family or your loved ones and relatives, and you have to gather all around a table to eat that. So that forces you to kind of reunion and Loang Ving basically is what they would say in Vietnam, to really come back together and eat this meal together. And I just like having that reunion aspect of it, and it's so symbolic to the items that you eat. So round fish balls, meatballs, and things because they're round and whole in unity. And then you wouldn't eat things like squid because it's, I think in Cantonese culture, it's also like rolled up squid. It's like people who lost their job would roll up. It was like Chow Yu or something like that.
Yeah.
And they don't eat the squid at all during the New Year, which is really interesting. But I do know that there's this one difference between Vietnamese and Chinese culture where, so you know the bitter melon, right?
Yeah.
You don't eat that during Chinese New Year because it's like
No, because you don't want like a bitter start to your New Year. You want
it's in the
you
name
want a
itself
nice,
that it's bitter melon, so cu qua, you don't want to eat that. But cu qua in Vietnam it's called khổ qua, which is a similar pronunciation to the word khổ, meaning hardships, qua as in going by. Hardships be gone. So people always in the south will have a bowl of gan khổ qua, meaning a soup, bitter melon soup during the New Year. And that is, they eat that as a kind of like the word, the meaning of the vegetable itself means hardships be gone. So they're believing that they eat the soup, the hardships will move on. But I know that that's like a big no-no in Chinese culture.
Yeah, honestly, with like different cultures, I think it's honestly just how they choose to interpret it. Like on how people just choose to interpret it with their language and then what they know of, or like what people have told them before.
Mm-hmm. But it is really interesting to see how there's that regional difference as well, and the food that's so authentic to one place. It's also, you can draw the similarities in different places as well. But yeah, like the hot pot, is that a common thing in Hong Kong as well?
Actually, I'm not sure. Do you mean like the hot pot where like you cook and eat at the same time, or do you mean like the one gigantic pot with food piled up on like a mountain thing and you eat that one giant from that one pot?
I think either or, as long it's like the action of gathering around a stove in the middle, and there's like a pot cooking.
I see, because like in Hong Kong we have two types. Like one is traditional hot pot, whereas like that they have restaurants here for, which is like you order things and you cook them and then you eat them at the same time, all from the same cooking pot. Yeah. Another one we have is called pun choi, which is literally you have to get this at a restaurant. It's unless you have like a gigantic pot. It's like a maybe 40-inch pot. From the base up, it's just like base is just like vegetables, like white radishes that will like absorb all the sauce, and then like there's like fish balls, mushrooms, and then like abalone, and then shrimp, you know, everything, and then like piled on the top like a mountain, and then you bring it in. It's like I don't know, it's like 10 like maybe 10 to 10 pounds of food just like in one giant pot that's cooked already, so you don't have to cook it. Reheat it, and then you just eat from the pot from the top all the way to the bottom.
Oh my god, yeah, I think I've seen those here. Like it's the clay pot or something, right? Like I think I've seen it at like TNT and things. Yeah. It's just overflowing with food.
Yeah. I think I sent you a picture for that. Did I send you a picture for that? If not, I believe I took a picture of that last year.
I think so. But the hot pot in Vietnam is the type where you cook the food in front of you.
Oh,
that is the
so
type that it's
type.
referring to.
Yeah, okay.
That would be mainly what they're referring to.
I see. Cool.
But it's interesting how there's like that side as well. And not so much in Vietnam, but I believe in Chinese culture, like spring rolls, fried dumplings, golden things represent gold ingots. So people like to eat those, soup dumplings and different things. I don't know in Vietnam, I don't think I've seen that as a widely big thing in Vietnam. It's more like they might have borrowed culture from surrounding countries. I don't really know. But the main food in Vietnam for that is in the south, there's thịt kho hộp Việt, or thịt kho tao is what they call it. So it's like pork belly braised with eggs and soy sauce, and they would eat that for 3 days because the markets are not open for 3 days in Vietnam for the first Lunar New Year. So they would just have a pot of the bitter melon soup and a pot of the braised pork belly and egg, and they would just reheat that for the next 3 days and eat it. So it's a giant thing. And then there's the bánh tét, bánh chưng, which you see behind here, which is like sticky rice wrapped in banana leaf, and it's boiled and steamed, and inside there's meat. There can be bananas, beans, and different types of flavors. And nowadays you have a whole bunch of different varieties of those things. But those are some typical things. And similarly to what you said earlier with the nhìn cao, with bánh tét and bánh chưng, afterwards people would cut it and then fry it, pan fry it, to give it the crispy rice edge to it.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, so those are things that I'm reminded of when it comes to Lunar New Year foods.
I mean, I'd like to try the rice thing you just talked about. That sounds like it would taste really interesting.
It is. It's very like, it almost tastes like zongzi in China. Like
Okay, so kind of like the glutinous rice dumpling where like they
Yes.
like wrap it in the bamboo thing for like the
Yeah.
Dragon Boat Festival.
Exactly, the Dragon Boat Festival ones.
Okay, but it's like
Similarly
more sweeter.
to that, or when you go to dim sum, the chicken rice that's wrapped in lotus
okay.
leaf.
Yeah.
Similarly to that, the similar idea
okay,
there.
okay. But just like with Vietnamese flavors, I guess.
Yes, so it's like much more intense. I know Chinese is like lighter flavors, right? But in
Yeah.
Vietnam, they put lots of soy sauce, salt, pepper, garlic, shallots, mung bean.
Oh, that
and,
sounds really
like,
good.
it's, like, very like seasoned. It's very seasoned. So it's
Honestly,
like
that
the
sounds
same
really good.
pork belly is the same pork belly that they used to cook the braised pork belly. They put it inside as the filling of the bánh tét and bánh chưng.
Oh, jeez. That sounds awesome. I would love to try that.
It's kind of expensive here now, but a lot of people, as a tradition in Vietnam, they gather together like a week before the New Year, and their entire extended family and neighborhood come to their courtyard of the house, and they spend the entire night wrapping these, and they had to boil it for 12 hours. They spend the entire night together just celebrating, drinking, eating, and wrapping these bánh chưng or bánh tét, and they just boil them overnight. So it's like also another really big tradition in Vietnam as well. It's like an aspect that they do, and the bánh tét, the round one, the log, is in the south, and the bánh chưng, the round one, the square one, is in the north. That's the difference here. The bánh chưng only comes in a savory flavor. Bánh tét comes in sweet and savory. So banana is the sweet version. Yeah, so now that we had so much about food and now I'm starving myself, what are some other traditions from your family during Lunar New Year? So let's hear about your experiences. You mentioned you were in Hong Kong before, so what are some of those memories that really just bring you back to the season?
In Hong Kong, like, it's usually, I think that's, like on the, like, Lunar New Year, like the last day would be like Lunar New Year's Eve, and then it's like, it's like a flower market, which is like just one of the craziest things that will happen in Hong Kong. Like, it will just, like all the people who will like probably never leave the house all just come out. So it's like, there's a term was called Yan San Yan Hoi, which is literally the entire like mountains and like seas of people. It's so like so hard to just move forward unless other people move forward. And then like there's like flowers, there's food, there's snacks, because everyone gets hungry. People stay there for like 3-4 hours. It's crazy. And then there's like stores that like sell like small businesses will try to get a spot at these markets to sell like their niche items or like different Chinese New Year things. So there was a company that sold like lion dance like box tissue like packages. So it would be like kind of like I don't know,
like
clothes for a sleeve for your like your tissue box. It looks like the lion dance, kind of like lions.
Wow.
Yeah, and then there's like lion dance puppets, so you can like for kids to play.
Mm-hmm. I've seen
And
this
then
here.
and then there's like a bunch of like crazy stuff like that, and then it's just insane. Like, it happens for a few days. So in that day, usually in that time would be, because they're the flower markets, they'll like sell a lot of different colors of flowers. because a lot of people like in Hong Kong at least will like still do the flower baths, so they'll buy it there, and then there'll be like people who it's almost a weird game where people just like, oh, I need to find like the orchid or like the jasmine flower or whatever has the most buds, and then they had to predict if they can like open on like all open or like the most can open on the day of the new year, because usually it signifies that you are going to be like really prosperous for the new year, like because there's like a term like fa hoi fu guai, which is like if the more flowers blossom, the richer you will become, basically. So a lot of people just like go trying to count the buds, and then sailors are like, no, this has the most buds, and then like, I guarantee you this will open on like that day, and then they'll like rack up the pricing for it, because like if numbers go down, they're like, no, and then you're like, wait, wasn't this like $20 yesterday? It's $60 now, and they're like, yeah, like things are going fast, but I'm like, this is like the cheapest I can do, and I'm like, it's really not, but it's like, okay.
Supply and demand, they gotta up the prices.
Yeah, this is just crazy, and then just like. Lion dance, some restaurants, like in Canada I've been to, I don't know if you know the restaurant called The One in Richmond Hill.
No, I'm not aware of that.
Basically before the pandemic, every year they would have like, the money god, so the Choi Sun.
Choi Sun,
like,
right?
Yeah, and he would come, and then with the lion dance and everything, and then the entire restaurant would just like be like so drowned in noise of like the traditional dum 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 dum, and then like with the people like dancing and the lions like trying, and then after the lions are finish their dance, and then with like the New Year greetings and then with the money god, like they'll like you can take pictures with them, and then like you can like they'll pose with you, and then because there are people inside, sometimes they'll like open it up and there's like a person inside, you're like, oh, I'm being eaten by a lion, but there's people inside, you're like, ah. So like we do like those crazy things, but it's just like really nice and nostalgic, and even if like because those things like happened when I first got to Toronto, it's just kind of like, oh, okay, I don't feel as homesick as I thought it would be, because like Chinese New Year was like one of the things that I'm just like, you just look forward to. If you don't have it, you're just kind of like, who am I?
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Like the whole sound of the lion dance, it brings you back to Lunar New Year so much. Yeah. I remember growing up, I would go to Vietnamese school, and they would have the New Year celebration. They would always have the lion dance, and it was like the most festive act that they always put on, and it just those sounds just brought you, oh, this is the New Year. Or whenever I go to the temple, like there's the Vietnamese temple here, or there's also the Phak Kum San. I don't know if you know about that one, the one in Mississauga.
I think so, yeah.
多人都佛光山, that one.
Yeah.
So that one, they always do a really big lion dance and dragon dance together, and it's, well, obviously the pandemic years they haven't done it, but before it was like the biggest thing ever, and that always sent me back to the New Year whenever I hear those sounds of the drums and just the ambience of that. You know, growing up though, I was terrified of those like the lions. Whenever I see them come out, I'll like run and hide, because you know, like a 3-year-old kid, like you see this giant monster looking thing, obviously I'd be like, I'm not gonna lie, kind of traumatized.
Fair enough. Like, yeah, but like there's like so many traditions and like superstitions and like origin stories behind like why they have to do that over the Chinese New Year. Like I was brainwashed in that, like in primary school in Hong Kong, is like they'll play you the same like 3 videos. It's like first it's like, oh, how the zodiac became to be, second is like why we have to wear red, and like why we have to make noise, and then like third it's like around like the food and things you do in over Chinese New Year, and you're like, it's like I can't get that out of my head now. It's like permanently just stuck in there.
Well, I think maybe if you're older now, looking back, you might see there's the value in that because you've learned about the culture.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people who grew up overseas here, like our Asian traditions were typically or traditionally underrepresented in media, in our school, in just our lives growing up. Obviously now you can see more of it with like the increase of just more awareness about it in the GTA, at least where we are now. I can see it more in like non-Asian streams of media and just grocery stores and different services. I can see there's mention of Lunar New Year. But I remember when I was younger growing up, if you didn't go to Chinatown or like somewhere that was Asian, there was like, it was like they didn't even know what this was. And a lot of people that I went to school with, they didn't even know, even to this day, they don't even know the cultures of it because they were never taught it. It was never represented, it was never shown. So I really tried hard to grasp onto that with whatever I could and preserve it, because for us, I think overseas, we don't have anything to grasp on for our identity, and this is one of the biggest things back in our home countries. And to see and hear that, oh, you guys learned about it and it was such a big deal, I'm kind of like, oh, I guess I'm envious of that in some way. I'm like, I wish I would have been able to be taught that more in my peers as well, which is another reason why I work so hard for this podcast, so that we can share these things that people overseas have not been able to get when they were growing up. Maybe when they're older and they realize they want to learn more about it, we have these resources for them to come back towards.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would definitely be in shock if, like, downtown Toronto just became as hectic as Hong Kong would be over Chinese New Year. Because Hong Kong, like, they pull out all the stops. It's like Chinese New Year in Hong Kong is like Christmas here. It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's... like, if you... Yeah, sorry.
I think at Pacific Mall in, like, Markham region, the Richmond Hill, probably it's, like, used to be just as, like, flower market and all of that stuff was, like, similarly, I would say they would do that there. These whole things about flower markets and festivals, it's very similar to Vietnam too. Like, they have Chợ Hoa, so, like, flower markets where people, similarly to Hong Kong, where they sell, like, the different stalls and flowers, but in Vietnam it's mainly focused on flowers. So people from the countryside would spend the entire year growing flowers just for the New Year season. So they make all their profits and all their money during this one season. So I kind of understand why they're inflating prices. And there's been a lot of PSAs going around in Vietnam saying, do not wait until New Year's Eve to buy flowers, because it is very disrespectful for the farmers, for these laborers who worked 11 months of the year growing these flowers, and to expect them to sell it cheap or give it away for free just because you wanted to wait last minute is, like, so disrespectful to them. And there's been lots of pictures going on social media on the 29th or the 30th of the Lunar New Year, so, like, the New Year's Eve. You would see farmers sitting at their market with flower stalls in the city because they came up from the countryside, just crying because they weren't able to sell all their flowers. And instead of giving it for free, there's a line saying "thà bỏ còn hơn cho," meaning they would rather throw it out and destroy the flowers than to give it away for free. So what a lot of, like, scenes that you see on New Year's Eve is people slashing the flowers, breaking the pots, cutting the trees, breaking it so nobody can take it. And because it costs so much to just transport it back to the countryside, they might as well throw it out. And it's like, it's a very big thing where they're just, like, saying now, for the sake of respect for these people, try not to wait until last minute to buy these things, because it's their only season that they can make money. But I understand, though, sometimes they do a bit, like, kind of go crazy with, like, pumping up prices. But I think from a two-side perspective of things, there's a reason why they do so.
Yeah, but a lot of people, like they'll still try to haggle, like, even though they're like, no, I'm gonna go next door to the other flower store and then see what their price is and then come back to you, and then, like, they'll, like, go all around. They're like, you know what, yeah, I think I'll go with you, and I'm like it's just really funny.
Well, you know what, that's actually part of the experience, I would say. Bargaining, it's part of the experience. If you don't, you're not in a market. But yeah, I do think that's, like, really interesting to see how there's those similarities with the markets, the food. Lion dance is such a big thing in Vietnam as well as in Hong Kong where you grew up. And just there's these similarities there where we can all come together and kind of celebrate this Lunar New Year together and not draw these borders and barriers saying you're Chinese New Year and Vietnamese New Year. I think, like, overseas, like, we're both very similar in terms of the culture, East Asian culture. Like, we have our differences that we bring to the table, but at the end of the day, it is one new year that we should celebrate together. And I believe it is also observed in Korea as well, where they have a lot of traditions as well. Maybe not so as elaborate and as crazy boom 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 as, like, China and Vietnam, but it's still there too as well.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to see all these differences in there.
Yeah. Like, I'm really interested in looking into, like, Japan's New Year because they do a completely different thing as well.
Mm-hmm. I believe for Japan, they follow the Gregorian calendar, so they move their traditions of the traditional Lunar New Year to January 1st on the regular calendar. So I think that's what they did in terms of, like, officially they transferred it over, but they also have their own calendar based on the emperor. So, interestingly, there's those similarities and differences there.
Yeah, definitely.
I think another aspect that I forgot to touch on was firecrackers and fireworks.
Yes.
So as part of the new year, you're always, like you said earlier, you always want to make loud noises, lots of sound, bringing in like a rushing and roaring new year. So firecrackers, fireworks are such a big part of culture. In Vietnam, they were banned in the mid-80s due to the increasing number of accidents and just the way that they were not regulated. So the Vietnamese government did ban them back in the 80s. So a lot of people who grew up in Vietnam have lost that kind of, the sound of the new year has gone. But I know my parents' generation, they mentioned during the first day of the new year and on New Year's Eve, people will be racing to see who can buy a bigger string of firecrackers and hang in front of the house to show off kind of like, I have more money than you. And like people would spend all of their money and savings on New Year's in Vietnam. So there's this saying in Vietnam saying, nghèo quanh năm, giàu ba ngày Tết, meaning you're poor all around the year, but you're rich during the 3 days of the new year. So they would be extravagant and spend and go all out during the new year, but be frugal and stringent through all the other years, all the days of the years. And firecrackers was a big part of, I would say, a waste of money almost, because they would do overload. Because in Vietnam, if you look at pictures like prior to the ban, like the streets would be solid red and full of smoke in the entire city, because every single household would burn firecrackers, and the paper of the red of the firecrackers would fill the streets, and there's this smell of like the gunpowder still in the air.
Like
and
in Hong Kong we are not allowed that, but like in Shenzhen, like more like up like a little further away from Hong Kong, like kind of closer to like more rural, like less developed areas of Hong Kong, and then like starting to move up to China, like there are people who still do that. So or like if you want to do that, you have to go like away from the city to kind of do that.
Yeah.
But like the government will the government will hold like like an annual like Chinese New Year like fireworks, so like it'll be broadcasted on the news on like every channel on like in Hong Kong, every like major TV channel in Hong Kong, and then it just like will be like Chinese New Year songs will be playing on the TV, and then you can just like see it, and then like depending on where you live in the city, you can kind of like also see it from your window. And then they do it in different shapes, you know, like happy face, like flowers, like hearts, and like and stuff, which is like insane.
Yeah, I think now Vietnam has also reverted to fireworks, really big fireworks show at City Hall of the major cities. And it's like a really big thing. Like people all go out and into the streets to watch it. It's similarly how here New Year's Eve people would gather at Times Square or like City Hall or these large public squares to watch fireworks shows. They do the same thing in Vietnam. So I think it's a good replacement. It's not as dangerous, I would say, but
Definitely.
I mean, you've lost that traditional firecracker sound, and it just brings so many people back to the season. I think my parents' generation, even my grandparents' generation, they think of like New Year's is the firecracker sound plus the lion drums. Those pair together, because typically it's done where you light a string of firecrackers and the lion dance starts going on. Like highly dangerous. I don't even know how they did it, but it was like a symbol of New Year's.
Yeah, definitely.
I really love hearing all these different stories and aspects to these differences in our culture as well, and I think it's really valuable to take a moment to really reflect on all of it. And this was an opportunity for us to really look back and kind of reminisce on all these things that we did growing up, as well as sharing to those who haven't got the opportunity to experience this a little more deeper insight into what our culture is like during this extremely important and festive season. So with that, I think this brings us to the end of our 5th and special Lunar New Year episode of Why Do Vietnamese. Please make sure to let us know if you have any suggestions in the future episodes of why do Vietnamese do this or that, and we will try our best to come out in the future with some more interesting episodes. Be sure to support us on our social media platforms at VSAR Ryerson on Instagram and Facebook, where you'll find more cultural content and our other podcast episodes on Spotify, Anchor, and YouTube as well. Thank you so much for joining us on our podcast. And Audrey, do you have any last words you'd like to share to our listeners/viewers?
Thank you, Brian, so much for like letting me come today, inviting me over to and like join you on this podcast. Honestly, this is the first time I've ever been on YouTube or like done a podcast, so this is like very new for me, and I'm like very excited to have been a part of it. If anyone, I don't know if you guys do this, but if anyone like has like other traditions that they do, like from like what your culture do in the Lunar New Year, I'd love to know more. Like if it's in the comments, I will definitely read and respond. Like I will try, but I feel like I just really want to know more because it's kind of opened my eyes, because usually it's like you kind of like live in a box. You're like, oh, this is like Chinese people do that, and then you're like, oh, Vietnamese people do that too. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, it's just not people like, it's like really opens your mind up to new things, you know?
I agree. Like even through this experience, I didn't realize there's like so many similarities, but yet minor differences. Yeah. And it was a great experience, and I do want to thank you, Audrey, as well, and the Ryerson University Chinese Student Association for collabing with the Vietnamese Student Association at Ryerson to create this special project. And I hope that viewers and listeners from both sides of our student groups will enjoy this. It's a bit of a special project to start off the new year. And you said this is your first time doing this, but you are a natural, Audrey. Like, honestly, thank you for being on the show. New year, new things. You're trying out something new. Let's start off the year fresh. And with that, I really want to send off my final wishes with everybody. I hope that everybody is staying safe throughout these past years. I know that when we first started this series, I said that hopefully in the future episodes we'll be in the studio. But here I am, still not in a studio, even though we've upgraded our background and become more refined as who we are as a show. I do think that I would like to thank everybody for your continuous support and your messages and emails to our platforms. I do see them and I get lots of good suggestions and look forward to hearing those suggestions. And of course, feel free to reach out to us if you have any more questions, inquiries on any of the topics that we touched. And of course, these are our personal intakes onto this, so we are not here also saying that this is the only correct way of culture. Culture is different on everybody's family and everybody's experiences. We're just sharing what we know or what is well known amongst these two different cultures. So we hope that you respect these as well. And we hope that with that, we can learn to grow a bit more and also see these comparisons between our culture and learn to have cultural appreciation with each other as well. I am a big contender of being able to safely share culture, which is why we created this platform as well. So I hope that everybody will help us take part in that as well. And one last wish for everybody. I do wish that everybody is happy, healthy for the new year, and wishing you lots of good health. And remember to stay positive through these times. We will make it through, and with the new year, I hope it brings everybody new hope that there's a new life on the horizon and we can make it through all these times. And it's all through the connections with peoples and different communities that we can get through these hard times. And with that, anything else, Audrey, you'd like to say?
Happy Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, whatever New Year you're celebrating in your culture. Happy that.
Happy Năm Mới, chúc mừng New Year is my hybrid version of that to get to the most audience. Thank you so much for joining us for our podcast. We hope to see you in future episodes. Happy New Year once again. Remember to stay curious and ask, why do Vietnamese?
Why are there different accents in the regions of Vietnam?
Why do Vietnamese have 2 wedding ceremonies?
Why do Vietnamese have French words?
Why is Vietnamese in Latin script?
Why do Vietnamese ride motorbikes?
You're listening to Why Do Vietnamese, a cultural podcast by VSAR.